Good evening. I am going to change the topic a little bit to a variation here. I'm going to talk about money, money, money. And I was thinking about taking this desert photograph, which is on Zabrego Desert State Park, off of this slide, but I thought it was kind of fitting. It's kind of the theme of the desert of money. Why is the California State Parks Foundation chick here to talk to you about urban parks? Because urban parks are a part of what's happening in the California State Park System and a piece that we're extremely proud of. This is the Los Angeles State Historic Park. You'll see it was in 2001 when it was purchased, nothing but an industrial wasteland, and it is now a lupin-filled field and will ultimately be a 32-acre oasis of gorgeous gardens. This is the Rio de Los Angeles Park, also industrial land, and now it is playing fields and beautiful restored wetlands. Watts Tower in Los Angeles is a state park, believe it or not, one of the quirkiest, weirdest historic monuments in the state of California, seconded only to Hearst Castle. This is Baldwin Hills State Park in Los Angeles. There are literally still functioning oil wells within a half mile of this building, within their inholdings in this new state park, which is developing and managed with the LA County system of parks. And this is Candlestick State Recreation Area in San Francisco. It's in the Bayview, Hunters Point portion of the city, one of the poorest in San Francisco, and we are doing a 34-acre wetlands restoration project with the department, which when it's done will have cost approximately $30 million. So we're putting our money where it matters in urban parks in California, as well as other glorious places. But what I'm going to spend most of my time talking to you about is the unfortunate allegory of state park closures in California. The problem is this. In California, state parks have been threatened 3 times in the last almost 2 years with closures. The budget roller coaster has been extraordinary, up and down, accumulating more than $1 billion worth of backlog of maintenance and operations problems. The governor threatened to close 48 state parks in January of 2008, and last year in May of 2009 threatened to close 80% of our California State Park System, which owns a third of the coast of California and some of the most extraordinary redwoods and deserts in California. The state anticipates next year a $20 billion deficit, and the funding crisis for state parks goes on and on. Currently, there are 60 parks in California partially closed and another 90 with extremely deep service cuts. That's 150 of our 278 state parks, which are currently substantially restricted for use in the state park system. And we anticipate, if we do not do something about this, that these closures will get worse and worse and worse. The reason we're encountering this problem is over the last 30 years, our department has been underfunded, getting approximately 40 to 50% of its annual fundraising need. The budgetary situation of the department has been exacerbated by a number of factors, which you can see on this chart, and I'll just explain very quickly what these lines are. The population of California, which is the yellow line on the top, has grown very substantially in this same period. The red line shows the growth of the state park system itself. Land acquisition dollars have continued to flow, and the department has grown by 49%. The green line shows increased visitation during the same period, up almost 41% over this period. But the blue line shows department staffing. This is actually 2 years ago, before the end of the chart is 2 years ago, growth of only 13%, and in fact there's been significant decline since then, against 49% growth in acreage and 41% growth in visitation. This creates an incredible crisis. And what is happening is irreversible damage. Historic roofs beginning to collapse, trails that will never be recoverable, visitation facilities significantly degraded. But when the governor tried to close state parks, he did us an unexpected favor. Because what he did was took an issue that was low in the minds of Californians, and he made it real. He made people understand that their state parks were what we experts had been saying to them for years, extraordinarily vulnerable. For 30 years, this state park system has been underfunded and underpaid in every way, yet it didn't take our words, had no traction. But when the governor said, close state parks, suddenly everyone started to listen. And our newspapers all across the state of California, this became one of the most important stories and continues to be one of the most important stories to today. And the public outcry over park closures has been extraordinary. A massive grassroots campaign in 2008 generated 60,000 faxes into the legislature, 44,000 signatures on petitions and postcards, and 10,000 participants in weekends of action where people would literally take this sign, which we asked them to print out on their printers at home, and walk into their state parks and take a picture of themselves and their families and send it to their legislators, send it to us. Make their voices known, and make their voices known they did. And so we are finally on the verge of a solution. I'm here with superstition today because I hate to talk about Prop 21 in any way that implies a conclusion. On November 2nd of this year, a citizens' initiative called Yes for State Parks is going to the ballot. It proposes a statewide initiative to create a dedicated and reliable funding stream for state parks. It establishes a trust fund called the State Parks and Wildlife Conservation Fund in the state treasury, and it will be funded by $18 annual surcharge on all California cars, non-commercial ones, and in exchange, each California driver will receive free admission to their state parks throughout the year. And with these dedicated revenues, more than $140 million worth of funding, which the department currently gets, will return to the general fund for other purposes that California so desperately needs, like education and health care. So, as I indicated, these revenues will be collected by the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles. There are 28 million vehicles in the state of California that will be affected by this. Larger commercial vehicles will not. And as I indicated, the true sweet spot of this is that Californians will be getting free day use access to their state parks. And we hope that it will, in fact, increase day use very substantially. Out-of-state vehicles will continue to pay full entrance fees, unless, of course, you've got a rental car that has a California license plate on it. Little hint. And the revenues, as I said, will be deposited into this trust fund. The state legislature will actually, every year, appropriate this, but they cannot use these funds for any purpose except for which the fund was designated. We have closed every loophole that has been used to degrade other dedicated funding streams established in the state of California. However, eternal vigilance will be necessary if we're successful. So we're on the ballot, as I said, on November 2nd. It needs to pass by 50% plus one. I get to be the one. And if it passes, it will be implemented in early 2011. But we remain facing incredible budget challenges. In the state of California, we were supposed to pass a budget on June 15th, and we have not passed a budget to date. So the California State Park System is running out of toilet paper. It cannot pay its water bills. And recently, one of my favorite rangers told me that he went to fill his gas tank and his credit card was refused. So the problems that are confronting us are extraordinary. But we have learned a lot of lessons about what will work to create sustainable funding sources in the last few years. So let me share some of those temporary interim lessons that we've learned. The public hates park closures. The trick is to take that energy and mobilize it into political motion. You can't just stand still and do it by yourself. You need lots of organizations and lots of partners. We have a coalition going into this election of 450 organizations and individuals that include healthcare organizations, major unions, small chambers of commerce, and many, many of the usual suspects, land trusts, Parks Friends organizations, all kinds of educational organizations have joined us. And that may make the difference. The bright lights of the press and the public make park closures and funding reductions the third rail of politics, but only if you cultivate them as such. Virtual communications in this day and age is incredibly key to keeping the press and the public up to date and in motion, and we urge you to use them. It is absolutely essential that you anticipate the crisis and be ready for it. We started planning for a long-term sustainable funding source many years before the governor decided that he was going to close state parks. We did it because we knew there was a problem, and when he made his first announcement that he was going to close state parks, we were ready for him. And that was absolutely critical to mobilizing the public and beginning to get out there with not just the problem, but the solution. You need to keep the solution simple and easy to follow, i.e. not wonky. So we've got this beautiful triumvirate: a cause people care about, state parks, an amount of money that they can understand and touch and feel. They know what it is. It's not a percentage of a percentage of a percentage of something. It's $18, and everybody knows what that costs. And we've given them something back: free access to their state parks. Just like Meg's remarks about not giving up, if your politicians can't do it, change the authorizing environment. We could not get this done in the legislature. In the state of California, it takes 2/3 to pass any kind of new tax in the legislature. They tried twice. They tried this twice, and we could not get it passed. So we collected 760,000 signatures across the state of California to make this happen. Your constituency wants to do something. Let them. Let them write letters, send photos, do signature collection, talk to their neighbors, and talk to their politicians. The truth of the matter is those of us in the parks world are going to lose eventually. All discretionary funding at the government level is getting less and less available. So unless we create long-term, sustainable funding sources for our parks, they will not exist into the future. So think of me on November the 2nd. Think of me on November the 3rd when I'm lying exhausted somewhere, hopefully with a champagne glass at my side. I know I can't convince you to join the California State Parks Foundation, even though we'd love you to. So I'm going to close by making one pitch. I'm the co-chair of the City Parks Alliance, and we're here shoulder to shoulder with you every day of the year in every city in the United States, trying to make sure that urban parks get their just desserts in the very best sense. And we hope that you will join us, because if you don't, you're dues chiselers. So thank you so much for listening and joining me this afternoon.